Yes, Mr. Chairman. I find Mrs. De Vos's texts, they were about the resistance and everything that came after. No unequivocal condemnation of the violence we have seen, not even after it was asked about very explicitly multiple times.
Mrs. van der Plas.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Then we both attended a different debate. Mrs. De Vos later provided some clarifications, but I really heard her say several times, and I think it was asked about 10 times, and also her, and you can have all sorts of opinions about her contribution, and everyone is free to agree or disagree with that. But she did in fact distance herself from the violence several times.
I think that demonstrations getting out of hand is an excess that we should prevent as much as possible, and that we should also condemn. People who use violence at a demonstration, of course they must be dealt with. I'm clear about what I think myself. I am against the use of violence, and I am also against peaceful demonstrators constantly being associated with a few excesses so that you don't have to talk about your disastrous policies. I have nothing to do with people who throw fireworks. I feel connected to the peaceful demonstrators who are standing there. All those people are lumped together with people who indeed do things that are unacceptable, but by lumping everyone together every time, you don't have to justify your policies, and you should be deeply ashamed of that.
And I find it quite serious that a Prime Minister actually goes along with the narrative from the left side of the House that this did not happen.
The Prime Minister.
No, Chair. It's also about what comes after the comma. Namely, that it's not surprising that due to certain policies, people choose violence. That is, because of certain policies, people choose violence. And this also fits with the warning we have often received from our security services that as politicians, we really need to be careful with the words we choose and what we downplay or justify together. For a certain part of society, this creates a justification to behave increasingly extreme toward public administration, toward democratic decisions, and toward the monopoly on violence that rests with the state and our officers on the street.
To conclude, Ms. van der Plas.
Yes. Chair, it's a bit of a strange debate because now we're talking about Ms. De Vos and she's standing right here and is perfectly capable of speaking up for herself. But I am standing up for the unity of the House and the 150 members of Parliament who are here, and I have an opinion about everything. I also have an opinion about what every party has said about everything. I also don't necessarily agree with everything that's been said, but what I believe Ms. De Vos said is that with the policies that have been made, violence is being imported. And she mentioned some figures about the number of rapes and violent crimes, and did not say that the violence used during those demonstrations was approved. And I find it especially important to say this because the Prime Minister is standing here. So this Prime Minister is also standing here for all these members of Parliament, for all the voters who voted for these parties. And I do think that now a false narrative is being created, and about whatever interpretation any party gives. You can discuss that, you can debate that, that's completely fine. But words should not be misinterpreted, because that also gives a wrong impression of the House as a whole.
Ms. De Vos will also have the opportunity to interrupt in a moment. Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I also stand here for our security services, who very clearly warn that the use of certain terms and insinuations ultimately leads to factual inaccuracies regarding governments, the judiciary and media science, which can influence the public debate in a wrong way. And I just made a clear statement about that in my introduction.
Mrs. De Vos.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I find what the Prime Minister is doing here very reprehensible. He is misquoting me. I would like to ask if he can then name the quote in which I supposedly condoned violence. I did not do that at any moment, at no point. I have repeated here to the point of tedium, I would say, that I condemn violence, and that's actually what's been happening all along with these interruptions. It's being suggested as if I have no opinion about the violence that people use at demonstrations. That is absolutely not true. I have said that is unacceptable. That must also be enforced. I want nothing to do with it at all. And every time the question is asked again, yes, why are you condoning it? Why don't you condemn it? I have condemned it. So if he doesn't want to mention that quote, and he can't, then I want him to retract these accusations.
The Prime Minister.
Chairperson, once again, it's about condemning the violence, but also about ultimately justifying the intentions that may be behind it. And I also see it as my duty to warn against that. If all our security services indicate that hinting at population replacement, at dilution, at violence that can be explained by policy choices or by local or national officials who neglect or fail to do certain things, that this is a slippery slope we should not go down, and that it ultimately clouds a sharp debate here. And earlier today, I sat listening to that for about an hour and a half with increasing amazement. And that is why I just started with that at my kickoff.
De Vos.
Yes, I can only conclude that the Prime Minister cannot answer my question and that he does not retract his words. Once again, I find it highly reprehensible and unworthy of a Prime Minister.